All right, we're back over at the 8-inch jointer, and we're going to go through the foolproof method of milling. So we have to find our concave surface and put our lines across the concave surface. We have to set our fence. Move that over to right about there will be good. Don't forget to lock it. Push paddle at the front, wide push stick at the back. Turn it on. Go. Take a look. And that is good. Thickness planer, and we'll thickness plane them, trying to keep them as thick as possible. Alright, so might as well mark the lines on right now. We always do that when we're trying to keep something as thick as possible. In this case, we're trying to keep it as thick as possible. So right now we are at 25 mils, so we'll set it to 28. Well, we'll check, see if this one's the same. Oh, this one's at about 23. Okay, so this one's thicker, but we'll eventually get them to the exact same size. So, set this. There we go. Half a turn, and send them through. Oh, come on. And do another half a turn. You can see how all the lines are off this one, but not this one, because this one was a little thinner from the jointer. See the faint lines on this one just a little bit, so we don't really want that. Let's go another quarter of a turn and we'll clean that up. We'll do it to both of them because we want them the same thickness. And there we go. So those are exactly the same thickness, and that's what we want. So step one of foolproof method of milling is finished. Now we have to do the edges. So we look down them, we find the concave edge, and we put our lines on it. Now we have to adjust our fence. So loosen off the fence lock, 2 hands, move your fence over. So we have about an extra centimeter of blade right there, and that's good. Tighten it up. Take the arrow on the push paddle, push that tight against the fence, push stick at the back. And there we go. Alright, so we now need to cut this rough edge off after we have jointed and made one real nice straight edge. So let's set our blade height. That's about good, we can live with that. Now, we want to make these as wide as possible. So we have 15 centimeters there. We have 15 centimeters there. So let's take off 3 mils. So 14.7 in this case. Yours will be different. You'll have to do the math on it. There we go. And let's double check, make sure it's going to work for this one as well. 15, 14.9. So this will work. Lower your guard. Turn your saw on. Left hand, fingers pushing tight against the fence, thumb pushing down. Push thick in the center. And there we go. So we do that to both pieces, and we're now ready to start laminating, getting those glued together. Okay, we're now ready to get some biscuits cut in here. So what we have to do, don't put anything together yet. What you want to do is you want to find your center. So just put a ruler diagonal line to diagonal, or corner to corner. So we have a diagonal line, and we have that. Go this way, and there is our center. All right, now we want to draw a 10-inch diameter circle. So set our compass. To 5-inch radius, which will create a 10-inch diameter circle, like so. Okay, and that's just preliminary. The reason we need this is because we have to figure out where we're going to cut the biscuit slots. We want the biscuit slots cut in, oops, so that they are totally encased by the wood. We don't want them eventually out here like that, or else we'll end up cutting off the biscuit and you'll see it on the edge of your table. Okay, that's what we're trying to avoid. So we're going to go there, go in about 2 centimeters. About 2 centimeters, make your lines across there, and make your lines across there. Then when we cut the biscuits in, you won't be able to see them from the ends. All right, so let's get ready to cut the biscuits. All right, so now we've determined where they're gonna go left and right. Now we have to find the center of this. Now this one doesn't have to be dead on, but in this case, it's pretty easy. We're 2 centimeters, so let's make a mark at 1 centimeter, like that. That's the only place you want to do it. I don't want you to do it up here, or here, or here. Once we set the biscuit joiner, we're good. So now we've got that established. Hang that over the edge just a little bit. Clamp it in place. One clamp here. Clamp at this end so it doesn't pivot on us. Okay, biscuit joiner. And now what we want to do is we want to set the depth. So our line, actually here I'll transfer it just so it's easier to see on the video. It's going to be right there. I'm not going to use this line to line it up. I'm going to use this one. So you can see our red indicator is set too low. So we want to bring that red indicator up, which is the center of the blade, right to our line. So loosen off the lock nut over here. So loosen that off. Then rotate this knob. And let's get the red line right there. Tighten your lock nut up. And that's set. And now we're going to cut the biscuits. So we will just plug it in. And we now want to get the center of the blade with this red, which is indicated by this indicator right here, on our line. We have our depth set already. Left thumb there to hold this flat. We don't want this to happen or this to happen. Okay, we've got our lines lined up. Turn it on. Push it in. And then same thing for this one. And then we'll do the other one, and then we'll take it over to the glue bench to glue up. All right, so now we're just gonna do a dry setup just to make sure that the biscuit slots and everything are cut okay. So I've got my clamps out, put my biscuits in. Okay, no glue yet, we just wanna make sure everything's gonna fit properly. Looking good so far. Slide these down. I'm Not sure why, but sometimes when we add glue, things don't end up the same. So that looks good. That's going to work. So let's take it apart again, and we will glue it. So you want to get some glue along the edge, some into the biscuit slot. Now you want to spread it. And again, work fairly quickly. Should be able to do this on your own. Should only take you a minute or so to get the glue spread, or even less. You need a little bit more down at this end. Don't want any dry spots or it won't stay together. And a nice film of glue. Clean finger off. Put the biscuits in. Put a drop of glue, I don't know, about the size of a dime on the biscuit. Put it together. Okay, don't worry if it doesn't line up perfectly. This is all oversized right now anyhow. And tighten it up. Keep some pressure down so it sits flat onto the table. Take a look underneath to make sure it's nice and tight against the clamps, right along there. Okay, you don't want it with a big gap on one side but not on the other. You want it nice and flat. Okay, so that's pretty good. We are going to scrape this off in about 10 minutes, and it is 9 o'clock right now. So 9 o'clock. So we're going to come and scrape this at about 9:10. All right, and that's all there is to it. All right, so we have scraped the glue off of our panel. It's dry, it's been sitting for 4 hours. Okay, now we want to make sure that we don't have any discrepancies. We have a little discrepancy from one to the other. So we're going to plane this down, but again, we're going to try and keep it as thick as possible. So we'll put lines across it, and we'll take it to the thickness planer, and we'll get rid of that little discrepancy. It is 1 inch thick, which is good. We have lots of room to work with. So we will set this thickness planer 3 mils more than that, or 1/8 of an inch, right there. Turn it on. See, we're not totally flat yet. There we go. We do that to both sides, and then we have it perfectly flat and still nice and thick. All right, so we've got it flattened perfectly. You can tell there are no lines. All our marks are gone. However, now we have to put more marks on again because we have to cut a circle. So let's find the center. So again, do our diagonal. You're roughly in there somewhere. Do our diagonal here. Now we want to draw an 11-inch circle. So 11-inch circle, so we need a 5.5-inch radius. Okay, a little cross-curricular there for you. You need to use your math skills. Let's draw our 11-inch circle. There we go. Now we'll go over to the bandsaw and we're going to cut. But since we're here, we might as well put a starting line on here for where our bandsaw is going to come in. So just have a nice gradual line, straight-ish line down to your circle. Now we'll go get the bandsaw set up and we'll cut that out. All right, so we're at the bandsaw. We're just going to adjust our blade guide a little bit. Drop it down a little, like so. All right, now we're ready to cut. Now this, we should be able to cut in one cut. Shouldn't have to stop. All right, so we're going to start in here, and we're going to cut all the way around just to the waist side of the line. So just to the waist side. Okay, so just to the waist side, a mil or so. Okay, so we have our piece cut out on the bandsaw. There's no need to sand. We're going to make it a perfect circle on the lathe. One other thing you want to do is you don't want to make, when we're on the lathe and we're removing material, we don't want to make the seat or the tabletop, whichever you choose to call it, any smaller than 10 inches. So let's just put a 10-inch diameter circle on here, just so you have a guideline. We can keep it quite a bit bigger than this, but we don't want to go we don't want to go any smaller than 10 inches. All right, so now we have to mount a faceplate. Now we have a variety of faceplates. You have to figure out which lathe you're on and that kind of thing. So we are going to use the smaller lathe today. So we'll go with the, in this case it's a red throat plate, and it's got a smaller diameter insert than the blue thread or throat plate. So that's one we're going to use. Get rid of those. We have to find some screws that are going to work. So we want the screws to go through so that you have about 4 or 5 threads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit. We can live with that. The one thing we want to make sure is that this screw does not go through this piece of material. So the way you can check it is just hang it over the edge and make sure that the end of the screw doesn't protrude through the top. So we've got that determined. Now what you want to do, and you have to do this by eye, there's no measuring, get right over top of your intersecting lines and try and get this circle centered on your intersecting lines. Alright, so I've got that centered on there as best I can. I'm going to mark 4 holes and 4 corners using the scratch-all. Or if you have a mechanical pencil and it fits through, that's fine too. Small indentation. There we go. Make those indentations a little bit bigger. And this is where we're going to drill 4 pilot holes about 1 centimeter deep. So we have those. I don't know if you can see those on the video. So right there, 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 and there. Want to drill in 1 centimeter. So let's go like so. Put your poor man's depth stop at 1 centimeter. Throw the drill bit into the drill and drill down 1 centimeter. Okay, so that's the 1/8 inch drill bit, which is really hot right now, 1 centimeter deep. And that's your pilot hole, and that allows the threads of the screw to bite. Okay, so they will grab on in there and hold the faceplate in place. So all we have to do, I want you to put these screws in by hand with a hand screwdriver, just so that you don't strip them, because we kind of only have 1 shot at this. So get these in place. Get them started. Hole. Get it in a couple of threads. Get each one in a couple of threads, and then we can just thread them in all the way. All right, so I like to go across. Just seems to keep things in alignment a little better. go. So that's what we're looking for. That's how you mount a faceplate onto a piece of wood. All right, so now we have our blank with our faceplate put on here. So let's thread that on. So just bring it over, get it all lined up. It's a coarse thread, it'll eventually start. There we go. There's no need to tighten this up, it'll tighten as we work. Okay, that's it there. Now we want to get the tool rest over and in place. So, it's a cam lock, and you kind of have to wiggle around with that. Get this over here like so, but we want this nice and parallel. So, we'll loosen that off for a moment, we'll pull this out a little bit, get our angle set. That looks pretty good. And we're going to get this as close as we can without it touching. We're just doing a setup right now. We're not going to turn the tool on. Now we're going to rotate and we're going to see if we have a gap. We don't want it to hit. Oh, there, it's hitting already. So that's one of the high spots. So let's loosen this off. Get it so the high spot passes. Keep going all the way around and we're good. There's our X again. So we're set up accurately, make sure everything's tight. And then what we need to do on this lathe, it's a little different than the other lathe. This one has what's called the cord lock or cord switch. So in the back of the saw, there's a little yellow box. Push that little red button and then come over here and turn this on. All right, so next thing we have to look at is changing the RPM or making sure the RPM is correct. On this one, we want to be running for this process at 700 RPM. So right down here, we can see right now it's at 1000 RPM. TPM is just French. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen off this lock nut and we have to adjust this while it's running. I know that seems odd, but it says change speed with motor running. We want to slow this down to 700. So we want to go this way. And now we're at 700 RPM. Tighten that back up. Shut it off. And now I'll just go through the 4 steps with you on hand positioning and how we do this safely so that we don't damage you or your project. We're going to be using a round nose scraper to start with. So step number 1 is get your left index finger right in here, and that tool rest is designed so that your hand just slides around along there nice and easy. So step 1. Step 2, put the tool on your fingers, then put your thumb onto the tool. So that's step 2. Step 3 is now slow and carefully get the tool up onto the tool rest until it just starts ticking. So imagine this is running, and that ticking is going to be that high spot that we marked the X on. Once it ticks, then step 3 is done, and step 4, squeeze hard with your thumb. We're trying to clamp this tool in between our fingers and the thumb so it doesn't get pushed back and forth like that. So we're going to clamp it, and then we're going to travel across the tool rest to the edge of the wood. So it'll look something like this. Step 1, step 2, onto your fingers, and that's important because what could happen if this is running and you went onto the tool rest, the tool can get caught and break a piece out of your wood. Wood can come back and hit you. That's not terribly likely, but it just scares you. So step 2 is right there. Step 3, slowly up onto the tool rest. Step 4, once we get it ticking, there's step 3, squeeze hard with the thumb, and the rest of step 4 is coming across like this. Do you hear that ticking? That's the high spot. Go till the outer edge. There we go. Now we will keep doing that. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, there's the tick. Squeeze hard with your thumb and move across. And we're going to do this until we get rid of all the bandsaw marks. So you can see where we've hit with the tool. So that was our high spot. That was a high spot. Little high spot there. Little high spot right there. But you can see all the bandsaw marks. We have to go until we get rid of those. So I'll do that now, and then I'll show you some other things once that's done. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. You can be pretty aggressive once you get a feel for it. The one thing you can do too to prevent this from going back and forth is tuck this handle into your side. So use your body mass to prevent the tool from going in and out. I think we're getting pretty close by the feel of things. So we can now see that we've got rid of most of the bandsaw marks. Still some bandsaw marks right there, so I have to go a little deeper. Still some bandsaw marks there. So we're not quite there yet. So a couple more passes. Better, I think that's got it. Nope, still some bandsaw marks. Too much pressure. When it stops like that, I'm pushing and being too aggressive. Because I know you're getting tired of watching this video. Now, let's see how we're looking. There, oh, still. Holy cow. Go this direction too if you're comfortable going from right to left. I'll do a couple of light passes. That helps to clean it up a little bit. There we go. Finally, I got all the bandsaw marks. Now we're going to switch to a square nose scraper. Okay, so that's a square nose scraper. Obviously, it's fairly apparent which one's which. And what I want to do with the square nose is I just want to I've got a little bit of an angle on here. I want to flatten that out. So with the square nose scraper, similar process, but I'm not going to move it left to right. Just going to go like that, and we'll flatten that all out. Got it. Since we're here, I'll show you now how to round off your outer edges. So you take the square nose scraper, make sure this corner doesn't catch. Okay, so go in at a little bit of an angle. Don't go straight in like that or like that. You want to go in angled like so that we have more of a gap from here to the wood than we do from the blade to the wood. Get it on there and rotate it. Get it as round as you like. Go in this direction too if you like. Yeah, that's pretty good for that edge. Then we can come over and we can do this edge down here. So again, now I'll angle it so that corner doesn't get caught. Rotate things. And again. And that looks about good right there. Shut it off, and you can do that as much as you like. I like that shape, so that's where I'm going to stop with the shaping. Next, I'm going to show you how to sand it. Alright, so we've got our shape. It's now time to sand. First thing on sanding is we want to speed it up. So we will turn it up to 1,000 RPMs. Remember, turn it on. Loosen off the lock nut. We have to go faster, so we'll get it up to about 1,000, maybe even a little more. That's about good. And you can see it's really whipping around now. You'll hear it changing it. Now we want to sand, so we're going to use 60 for 4 minutes, 80 for 2 minutes, 100 for 2 minutes, and 150 for 2 minutes. So what you're going to do is you've got to put some pressure on the sandpaper. That pressure and the speed are going to create friction. Friction's going to create heat. So you might want to fold this one more time like so you have more insulation value to it. Put it on there. Use decent pressure. Shape around your corners. You got to get those two where you've shaped it. And I want you to do that for 4 minutes. You may need to change your sandpaper every once in a while so you get sharper sandpaper. So you would do this for 4 minutes. Then you do 2 minutes with 80 grit in the same fashion. 2 minutes with 100 grit. And I'm using quite a bit of pressure. Don't just hold it like this. That's not going to do it. You have to put some pressure on it, like so. So there's a clock right above you. Do this for 4 minutes. So we'll just finish up with the 150, and that's good. Now what we want to do is we have to take this piece off, and it can be a bit tricky, but it's not too big of a deal. Once it's stopped, lift the lid up here on the headstock, and then you'll notice right here, you'll see 2 flat spots on this shaft. You want to get this wrench right here, put it on that shaft like that, put it down so it stays in place. Then take, these are called channel lock pliers, they're adjustable. So we want to get this opening here about the same size as the outside diameter of the faceplate. So we push this little plunger in, slide that to about that, and we're just estimating. Get that on there, squeeze down, and push down. There, loose. Hold your hand underneath so that you don't drop it. Spin it off of there. And there, the top is done. Minus we have to do a little bit of sanding on the surface. So just when you're sanding, just sand with the sanding block with the grain. 80 grit, 100 grit, 150, and it should be done. And that's the top.